Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the government says it will not force UK firms to list or name any foreign workers they employ. Last week, a Conservative briefing suggested firms would have to be clear about the proportion of their workforce which is international. Labour says the government is in disarray over the policy. The government says critics have misunderstood the plans. On Tuesday, the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, told the Conservative Party conference that the government would be examining whether we should tighten the test companies have to take before recruiting from abroad. She added the test should ensure people coming here are filling gaps in the labour market, not taking jobs British people could do. She was referring to the resident labour market test, which businesses have to undertake when they want to recruit non-EU workers to demonstrate they are filling genuine gaps in the labour market. This requires a company to advertise the role in the UK for 28 days and demonstrate no qualified resident worker could fill it. In a briefing after the speech, the government said it would consult on whether to require businesses to set out the impact on the local labour force of their foreign recruitment and be clear about the proportion of their workforce which is international. The next day, the Times newspaper led with the following headline: "Firms must list foreign workers." The subheading read, "Plan to shame companies that turn down British staff." In an interview on the Today programme, Ms Rudd said she wanted to flush out firms that were abusing the current rules. It resulted in a wave of criticism. The Home Secretary's own brother, Roland Rudd, who campaigned for Britain to remain in the EU, said those of us who find the denigration of non-British workers appalling have a duty to speak out. Yesterday, the Defence Secretary, Michael Fallon, insisted we will not be asking companies to list or publish or name or identify in any way the number of foreign workers they have. We're going to consult with business on how we can do more to encourage companies, to incentivise them, to look first at the British labour market. Has there been a U-turn on this, Oliver Dowden?
No, the most certainly hasn't. And actually, if you look at the quotes, Amber Rudd never actually said that there was going to be some sort of naming or shaming or public register.
No, but she did say that they would have to list the numbers of non-British workers.
Yes, I think it's sensible in terms of managing immigration policy. Remember, we need to get immigration under control to actually have a sense of how many foreign workers a company employs.
Right.
Now, I don't think this is terribly radical. They do it in the United States, and I actually believe it's...
I didn't ask about whether it was radical. What I'm saying is, has there been a U-turn? Is the government now going to require foreign workers to list how many non-British people they have working for them?
Well, there's a consultation ongoing on it, and I think that will be one of the proposals in the consultation.
Right, so it is still there.
But what is being argued is that somehow the government or the Home Secretary made the case that this would be published, people would be named and shamed. That is not the policy.
Hang on a second.
This is about managing migration.
Let's take it one stage at a time. Yeah. You've just said there is a consultation going on whether companies will be required to publish the numbers of non-British workers they have.
Not publish. Publish suggests that it is put out into the public domain.
So that's the U-turn, because that was the implication. That was the implication.
No, well, I don't want to nitpick over this, but actually, can you show me where the Home Secretary said that there would be a published register? Because I'm slightly baffled by this. I've looked through all of it, and I can't see where the Home Secretary publicly said there would be a published register.
Right, because they've come out and said there isn't going to be one, so obviously people presumed there would be. They've had to actually deny it.
Well, in the first place. It's hard to have a U-turn when it wasn't the policy in the first place.
All right, well then let's categorically say there isn't going to be made, a list isn't going to be made public then.
I don't think there was ever a proposal for it.
Fine, so that's clear. But they will be required to come up with the data and the information on this.
Well, it's one of the ideas that's under consideration as part of the consultation.
Right, OK. What do you think? This has now been clarified by Michael Fallon. It's now been reiterated by Oliver Dowden that these comments were misinterpreted.
I think the whole premise of having a list worries me, whether it's published or secret. I don't think the government should have a secret list of foreign workers, and I think that deeply worries me. And I think the tone of how we have this debate around migration and immigration is worrying me. That the road that this government is going down is deeply concerning, and I just think having a list per se is absolutely the wrong way to tackle it. Why don't we talk about
did you feel the
terms
same?
and
Hang on, did you
conditions?
feel the same when Ed Miliband suggested this very idea in 2011?
Yes, I don't believe there should be a list at all.
Right, so
I don't
Ed
think it should be a
Miliband,
secret list or a public
did
list.
you make your voice public at the time when Ed Miliband floated this exact idea of telling job centres which firms had more than 25% of foreign staff?
This did not. Ed Miliband did not make a statement. A public
He made a speech.
He did not make a speech at party conference calling for companies to publish a list of foreign workers and talked about British, jobs that British people can take.
Well, what did Gordon Brown say?
Yes,
I mean, you were Minister in Gordon Brown's government. He said British jobs for British workers.
And what
what did that mean?
And what happened when he said that? The whole thing blew up, and then he retracted that.
Right.
publicly.
So he was wrong, but you were a minister there. Did you say so at the time?
And he was wrong. Yes, I did.
Right. Okay.
And he apologised for that, and he said it was wrong. I have not seen any retraction. All I've seen is the government say, well, let's not nitpick. Let's look at the details. The details of what you say is important. You are in government. It is important what you say and the message that you give out to the general public.
Well, I think we've been through this discussion. It wasn't ever the intention that it would be published. But secondly, I can't understand your outrage over this, because as Joe was saying, this was something that Ed Miliband was proposing in 2011. So now for Labour to jump on the bandwagon and say somehow this is outrageous, it doesn't really ring true. And also I think Labour's policy on immigration is slightly confused, because I was listening to Keir Starmer at the weekend. He's saying that he thinks you should reduce numbers. Jeremy Corbyn says he doesn't think we should reduce numbers. What is Labour's policy? Should we or shouldn't we reduce numbers?
Well, what actually Labour's talking about is looking at putting systems in place, so making sure that people are properly paid so that wages are not undercut. And by doing that, and by companies doing that, it will naturally bring down immigration, the people that are coming in and working. So we're looking at structures and systems. What Labour's definitely not saying or going down the road is saying let's have a secret list of foreign workers. We are not saying that.
But should the numbers actually come down? That's the question.
I don't think
Does Labour believe that the numbers of migrants or the number of people migrating to the UK, should they come down?
We've quite clearly said that you can't put a number on immigration because that's an arbitrary number and it's never ever worked.
Keir Starmer said the levels of immigration should be reduced.
Yes, but
is he right?
He's not putting a number
should they come down
on the level, and he's not actually saying. What he's saying is if we have systems in place, that means that people are properly paid when they're working, naturally that will bring the numbers down. So what are we doing to make sure that people who are working are properly paid and getting a living wage, for example?
Is the level of net migration, which is around 330,000 a year, is it too high?
I don't think that we should look at it in those terms. We should look at it. Right. We shouldn't look at it.
Keir Starmer says that number should come down.
Yeah, but it's how we work towards a fair immigration policy in the UK.
I understand
not how we denigrate people who are coming in working. If you had
is Keir Starmer denigration when he says I would like, he said, the net migration figure to come down, levels of immigration to be reduced?
Right. So that's what Keir Starmer has said, but then you have to look at what he's putting in place. And that is the difference in terms of what the Labour Party is saying and what the Tory Party is saying.
Do you think this was handled well by Amber Rudd and the Home Office? I mean, the briefing by the Home Office said the government would consult, as you said, on whether to require businesses to be clear about the proportion of their workforce which is international. So not as transparent as it could have been. It did lead then to reports in the press, as you know, condemning the government for what seemed to be, some say, even xenophobic remarks. Was it handled well?
I think the Home Office handled it perfectly well. I think what's actually going on is a group of people who are looking for any excuse to revisit the Brexit decision
which group of people are you talking about?
I think the media are constantly looking for splits and divisions where there are none. Actually, the policy has been clear all along, and I think a lot of the people that have seized on this are actually trying to go back to the original Brexit argument itself. Now, I think that argument has been settled by the British people. Part of that is certainly controlling migration, and that is something that the Prime Minister is committed to doing.
Steve Hilton, whom you know and you work with, said the plan was divisive, repugnant and insanely bureaucratic. I mean, is it right to put more bureaucracy from a Tory government on businesses?
Well, I read Steve's article. I think he made some very good points, but I simply didn't agree with him on that.
Why do you think he said it then? I mean, he's attacking the government in a quite visceral way.
I think Steve's perfectly capable of speaking for himself. I simply don't think he's correct. I think lots of people have got rather carried away with something that is not a terribly radical policy. It's something they do in the United States, something that Ed Miliband proposed previously. This is about trying to control migration. That was a central issue during the general election campaign, and the Prime Minister is determined to deliver on it.
Let's talk about business and business reaction, because these are the people that are going to be involved in making lists or making clear how many non-British workers they employ. I mean, the head of the CBI, Carolyn Fairbairn, who isn't exactly a hysterical person, has warned that the Prime Minister risks closing the door on an open economy. And she's not just talking about the issue we've been discussing. She's talking more broadly about the whole tone of the conference being anti-business and not welcoming. Do you accept that? I
really do not recognise this. I mean, I sat through the Prime Minister's speech. I thought it was a very good speech. That's not what I took from the speech at all. It's not what I took from the Chancellor, what the Chancellor said. The Conservative Party has always been and will continue to be committed to an open economy, to low taxes, to deregulation. And as we leave the European Union, it's more important than ever that we face out to the world. But that is not to deny that there were two very clear messages from the referendum campaign. Number one was people wanted to control migration, and number two, people wanted to have control of their own laws, and the Prime Minister is delivering on that.
When you say people, you're talking about the 52%. You make it sound like it was the vast majority. It was 52% versus 48%. And what Carolyn Fairbairn is saying and warning the Prime Minister is that if you take the issue of immigration too far, then you will harm the economy.
Well, first of all, you say it was 52 versus 48. Actually, I think
that was
probably
the result.
more. Yes, indeed. But actually, if you look at what that number means, more people voted for Brexit than I think voted for any political party, certainly in a generation.
That's not what I'm saying. It was not the vast majority. So when you say people, it's not quite the same as saying 80%, is it?
Well, I never said it was the vast majority of people that advocated, but I was absolutely clear during the election, the referendum campaign, these arguments were very well aired. And actually, for me, this was where the balance lay. It was between the economic argument and the very strong arguments, which I thought there were for controlling migration and controlling our own laws. On balance, people decided for the latter rather than the former.
I've been getting away with it all